dong, dong. How's everybody doing? How is everybody doing on YouTube? Where did there it is. Where I had my phone. Orke. How's everybody doing? Everybody, nice and chill. Everybody's good. We chilling out ourselves. Smoking, playing some DBD. Yep, I'm getting off. Honestly, I was debating on not streaming today, but I was like, you want to know what? That's pussy. A stream. Exactly what I'm doing. Botrix has successfully gonna work today with my alerts and stuff, Botrix. Yo, what up? Fucking King, Jesus Christ, I forgot what to call you there for a second. My mind went blank. Hey, I'm chilling, man. I'm chilling. How are you, man? Yeah, out here chilling. I'm just looking at Twitter right now before I start doing anything. Hey, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. How in the fuck a 12-year-old doing all that? How the fuck? Got the fucking Incredible Hulk for a 12-year-old. God damn. Playing Skyrim? I haven't played Skyrim in fucking years. Damn!
Twice. He went up there and lifted the whole.
I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't. I
Oh, music.
Possibly lose if we waste time arguing and fighting with each guys, come on, have to come together.
Hold on a second. I got a question. Matter of fact, I got a problem. Aren't you supposed to be Jamaican? What happened to your accent?
And my true club, that's 2 times 2. Man, this shit dogging in war times too. Yeah, my eyes red, but I'm no diamond. If you run it up, that's all fine.
We have ballin', usual like Kobe. But you know what? Ooh, word about a hater that don't know me. He say that he tough, then that bar gotta show me. Show up in the truck, extra pause every 4G. Say my name 3 times like I'm Tony. Diamond VVS, I put my gas all on my rollie. I ain't never believe nothing that you told me. These niggas keep sneak this and they turn me to my old me. Before I had these meals, I was also lonely. Running, feeling heavy with my 40. I ain't never been a phony. You be getting bands, Harley. Yeah, I just fucked your bitch. Sorry. Man, I put that on my shawty. Better be one last skate. Sorry. No name for no game. Satari. Diamond they hit like one. Starving. Yeah. Rockstar life be calling. Don't want that girl, she styling. Big ol' fire wheel, I can park it. I'm from Radish, bitch, in the station. Big ol' fire, bitch, that's my target. 10 bands, what you say? 10 bands. Fuck my shit, I got it. Rockstar life, watch this. Young niggas split like Mark Drip. Lost your bitch and stop lit. AP Mule my brother. 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 AP Mule my brother.
That's 2 times, Trash pulled up with me. Do it when 160. The bitch staring at me. Got real big titties. What's in my jeans? Them real big 50s. Flight after flight, hitting real big cities. From the sandbox, yeah, my brothers is with me. If they give me a bond, I'm coming to get me. And in the club, we snuck the semi. Cup dog and Remy. I can feel the envy. And my triple cup, that's 2 times 2. Man, this shit dog in war time, so yeah, my eyes red, but I'm no diamond. If you gon' run it up, that's all on you. Disrespect the gang, we stall on you. Send charcoal shots, don't get called on you. Ring my bell, better have that code on you. Hey, marry that guap, you know I do.
AP Mule to my brother. 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 AP Mule to my brother.
That's 2 times 2.
Yo, let me see your hands to bring you outside in my land. I've been with the gangsters, been news, hanging out the window, let it bang. For the right price, they'll do, yo. That's my right hand man. We out in Shibuya, outside in Japan. Stripes running around me like Kruger. What's it to, yo? Introduce you to my new girl. There's Ruger in my pants, yo. Let me see your hands to bring you outside in my land. I've been with gangsters, been news, hanging out the window, let it bang. These niggas be on trees, yo. I swear that they switch. I just need a weed song. Already ducked this bitch. They say I'm on fire, like a 19th century witch. No snow on the block, the wire. They think I'm 50 Cent. I've been hitting stains. Boo, you too. Let's be Bonnie Clyde from the sand. We gon' be like Pablo Esco. We don't need no fucking middleman. Let me see your hands to bring you outside in my land. I've been with the gangsters, been news, hanging out the window, let it bang. For the right price, they'll do, yo. That's my right hand man. We out in Shibuya, outside in Japan. Stripes running around me like Kruger. What's it to, yo? Introduce you to my new girl. There's Ruger in my pants, yo. Let me see your hands to bring you outside in my land. I've been with the gangsters, been news, hanging out the window, let it bang.
Hey, I feel you. That's why sometimes I even, like, right now, I'm just debating on when to honestly hop on it for a little bit. I mean, it's not that for me, it's just the fucking fact that there's so much bullshit and stuff that can happen. That's just gonna aggravate me, and it's not gonna get any better. Plus, I have to play solo queue if I play Survivor. And Killer, my MMR is to the point where I'm just mainly playing bully squads, so I don't really want to play Killer right now. It really 100%. 100% DBD is very bullshit. Very bullshit. Like, a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people that continue to play, not continue, fucking, a lot of people that play the game a lot on Twitter and shit keep on saying the game is fucking killer-sided. Right? The thing is, the game's actually way more Survivor-sided, and they won't admit it. They won't admit it. I'll go ahead and tell you how it's fully Survivor-sided. Four-man squads. Like, it literally defeats the purpose of killers. It defeats the purpose of stealth killers completely. Because you'll know where they're at all times. 4 people talking to each other. They easily know where everybody is, so they can take hits if they want to. Know when to continue to crank the generator. Know what to do in certain situations. It's fucked. I like to play both sides, but the game is completely Survivor-sided in my opinion. Because, I mean, I play more Survivor than Killer, and I'm saying that. Killer at certain MMRs is fun, though. I remember back before they changed, like, all the rank stuff, I used to actually play Freddy a lot. Freddy was one of my mains. Aliens, your Killer? My main used to surprisingly be Freddy. And I dominated Freddy up to like Eerie 2. And at Eerie 2 was whenever I finally started getting like 4-man squads and people that were going for nothing but wins. Back then, Dream Palettes not a fucking lot. Dream Palettes were the shit back then. They were different too. Different at that time. Instead of having like a recharge and you're only able to place them in like certain spots, you used to be able to just place them anywhere you wanted to at any given time. And it made them, I don't know why anybody didn't really use them, honestly. It made them extremely OP. If you know how to time the placement. You don't want anybody to see you. I'll be right back. Oh. Alright, so I'm gonna pull something up for us to watch for a bit. I'm gonna eat, and then we're gonna play some games.
Germany. With less than 7,000 residents, the people of the city had grown accustomed to the silence that filled their streets. Except for the constant noise from the trains that passed the Hamburg-Hanover railway line, the small town enjoyed total tranquility. But all of that will change a few hours into the morning. In 1998, one of the worst train accidents in German history occurred, killing over 100 people and injuring another 190. The Eski train disaster ranks as one of the worst high-speed rail accidents in the history of the world. The train involved had left Munich in 1998, set for Hamburg, a distance of almost 400 miles. However, just a few minutes before reaching Hamburg, the train will derail and crash into a bridge, killing almost half of the passengers on board. This would result in the Eski train disaster, a case that would baffle investigators for years.
Imagine living in that house right
The
there.
Express could easily pass as Germany's first modern high-speed train. How then did this masterpiece crash into a road bridge? Welcome to Dark History, where we unravel the most disastrous events in history. If you want to support the channel, consider subscribing and like this video. On June 3, 1998, the Intercity Express of the Deutsche Bahn AG was a train set to travel from Munich to Hamburg. The train left the station with 287 passengers and 6 crew members, scheduled to stop at Augsburg, Nuremberg, Fulda, Kassel, Göttingen, Würzburg, and Hanover before finally stopping at Hamburg.
That's a long
At
journey.
exactly 10:30 a.m., the train stopped at Hanover, only to continue its journey northwards in a few minutes. Less than 40 minutes and 80 miles away from Hamburg and just 4 miles south of central Eschede, the train plunged to its death. Before the accident, the train had been traveling at 124 miles per hour, and around 10:57 a.m., a tire from the first passenger car tore through the cabin floor. This snapping resulted in the tire being stuck between 2 unoccupied seats. This incident was noticed by Mr. Dittman, who was sitting opposite the unoccupied seats with his son and wife. Worried that something major had gone wrong with the train, Mr. Dittman and his family abandoned their compartment to find the conductor. Mr. Dittman found the conductor and explained how the large piece of metal almost hit his wife and son. Dittman asked the train to be stopped. The conductor refused. According to company policy, the risk had to be properly assessed before an emergency stop could be triggered. Mr. Dittman and the conductor made their way back to the affected car. However, as they walked down, the train began swaying violently from one side to another. At this time, the tire had broken off the wheel guide, blocking the entrance area to the compartment. The swaying continued, and since the wheels were no longer embedded in the wheel guide, it bumped across the rail still at full speed. While all of these happened, the conductor still refused to stop the train. During a later investigation, Mr. Dittman admitted that he didn't see the emergency brake that was right in his compartment. Just as Dittman and the conductor were about to take a closer look at the armrest that the tire tore through, the train crash occurred. The train swerved off the tracks, racing underneath the bridge on its right. This initial crash led to the death of 2 railway workers, before it ran into several trees that eventually stopped the train. But this wasn't all. In an unfortunate turn of events, the bridge collapsed on the train cars 5 and 6, reducing them to around 150 millimeters high. Naturally, every passenger in these cars was reduced to nothing, but it was about to get even worse. The train tracks were now blocked by the fallen bridge, causing the remaining cars to be trapped in a zigzag pattern. Almost immediately, Car 7, the restaurant car, the service car, and a number of first-class cars derailed, slammed into the big pile of rubble. While all of these happened, the front power car of the train cut itself off and continued to travel. It suddenly came to a halt right after it passed the Eski railway station, sustaining only minor damage. This crash created a sound that altered everyone around. In fact, witnesses described the sound as horribly loud, with some residents thinking it was an airplane accident. Immediately, nearby residents rushed to the scene and notified the authorities. The accident was first seen by Miss Carl and her husband, Mr. Carl.
Oh my god,
Miss
I
Carl,
imagine
who was
living
50
there!
years old at the time, lived just 20 meters away from the rail tracks. She recalls sitting in the kitchen with her husband when they heard a deafening crash tear through the entire house. The house shook violently, which caused a coffee cup to fall off the table. Shocked, the couple stepped outside. What they saw was incredible. A large train that had turned into a rubble of torn metal, debris, and human bodies. At exactly 11:02 a.m., the police declared the accident an emergency, and it would need over 1,000 rescue workers to help out. The passengers in the front power car and first cars of the train were fortunate,
Heard that,
with
hell
most
yeah.
passengers sustaining minor injuries. However, the major casualties were the passengers seated at the rear of the train.
I think my
99
highest
passengers in the train
prestige
and 2
killer is
railway
the
workers
hag.
died, bringing the total death toll
That's
to
only
101.
because back
However,
whenever,
only
well,
96
before I
of the
took a
victims
long
will
ass
be
break from the
identified by
game,
police, and the
I
last
wanted to
5
like
remain
name the hag for
unidentified due
some
to the
reason,
extent
and I
of their
leveled her up
injuries.
many times.
Fortunately, despite the loss of over 100 lives, the fact that the train
And I
was
guess
only
it all just added up
44%
to be
filled is an
prestige
interesting
four.
coincidence. Experts have claimed that if the train was any fuller, more casualties would definitely have been reported. 5 days after the crash, the authorities began clearing off the accident site. Evidence was gathered, causing the investigation process to begin immediately. Interestingly, the investigators had discovered an amusing fact a day after the accident. About 3.7 miles away from the site of the accident, there were missing chunks of concrete, leading the investigators to suspect that someone or something had caused the train to go off track. As the investigation progressed, things slowly started to look promising. First and foremost, the 3-piece wheels on the train were not in the best condition. For every rotation the train makes, the metal tire compresses into the shape of an oval. The more rotations the train went on, the more likely it became for the metal tires to develop evident cracks. At the time of the accident, the metal tire of the ICE-1 was 854 millimeters in diameter, just a few millimeters shy of the approved 862 millimeters. Also, the tires weren't regularly checked, because after the accident, investigators revealed that the tires should have been changed at 890 millimeters. 3 years after the accident in 2001, 3 engineers were charged to court and blamed for not properly testing the tires. However, this trial was never completed. The spokesman for the relatives of the victims, Mr. Lowen, argued that the engineers weren't the guilty ones. He told the court that instead he wanted to see the board members of the train company in court. This would eventually lead to chaos in court, with lawyers exchanging violent words at one another. The trial was consequently cut short, and the 3 lawyers were required to pay a fine of 10,000 euros each. Also, in 2008, the Deutsche Bahn paid 32 million euros to relatives of the dead and the survivors, and the CEO at the time publicly apologized for the accident. Just a week after the accident, the DB banned the 3-piece wheel service and worked tirelessly on developing a better and improved system for the trains. The first passenger car, which developed minor damages, was donated to the German Federal Agency for Technical Relief, and was also used to shoot National Geographic's Seconds from Disaster. The front power car was repaired and placed on another train, returning it back to service. One of the survivors, Mr. Bausch, built a garden in honor of the train accident victims in 2000. To date, the small memorial garden sits in his backyard and attracts thousands of visitors each year. The official memorial for the victims was also unveiled in 2001, and it features 101 cherry trees, which represents every victim that died. Their names are written on the gate, right beside a poem, immortalizing them forever. It's been over 23 years since this tragic incident, but its memories remain.
Rest in peace to all 100 and...
It's November 11, 2000, and winter sports are in full swing at the picturesque alpine village of Kaprun. The 9 a.m. funicular train is carrying 161 passengers up the steep track to the slopes of the Kitzsteinhorn mountain. After just a few hundred yards, the train disappears into the tunnel leading up to the summit station. It's a trip that shouldn't take longer than 10 minutes, but the train car doesn't arrive. Instead, the power goes out, and the connection with the conductor is lost. Now, there is no way to find out what's happening in the tunnel. About 20 minutes later, clouds of thick black smoke are billowing out of the tunnel's upper end into the Alpine Center station. Something inside is on fire. If it's the train, all the passengers and the conductor are cut off deep in the heart of the mountain. A trap that's almost impossible to escape. Ultimately, only 12 passengers defied their instincts to escape the Kaprun fire disaster. They avoided a tragedy that nobody saw coming, caused by a seemingly incidental, deadly detail. The possibility of a fire breaking out in the tunnel was close to zero. There has never been an accident like this on any Austrian cableway. After all, there was nothing in the tunnel or the funicular to incite the blaze. The Gletscherbahn funicular had no engine, fuel tanks, or other parts of a standard railway. Using steel cables, two trains traveling in opposite directions are hauled by a powerful motorized winch system. Austria has over 20 of these railways, including Gletscherbahn Kaprun II, which was built in 1974 and modernized in 1993. The single track was 4,265 yards long, of which 3,600 yards were in the tunnel. As one train ascends, the other descends on the same track, bypassing each other at the passing loop. Each of the two trains comprise two carriages with 8 compartments accommodating up to 180 passengers. 2 cabins were positioned on either side for conductors responsible for opening and closing the doors. Most of the people inside the train that day were frequent guests of the Kaprun ski resort and had ridden the funicular many times before. Because of this, none of them suspected the train would break down, let alone catch a light. This ride would shatter their assurances. Thomas Kraus, a passenger in the rearmost compartment, was the first to notice something fishy was going on. After only 65 feet up the track, he saw the control dashboard smoking in the empty conductor's cabin behind him. As the train kept ascending, the smoke became more intense. It then appeared in the passenger compartment, making people nervous. As the train entered the tunnel, the anxiety in the compartment turned into a panic. A fire was about to break out. Caught by hysteria, the passengers started banging on the compartment walls. There was no way to alert the conductor in the cabin on the other end of the train. The funicular was not equipped with fire alarms, intercom systems, or emergency brakes. Unfortunately, there was no way the conductor could have heard these calls for help. One passenger tried to use his mobile phone to call the service station, but there was no signal inside the tunnel. The train kept going up the tracks and deeper into the unlit tunnel. As feared, the fire broke out and spread across the vacant conductor's cabin at the back. Then, 4 minutes after leaving the station and 650 yards inside the tunnel, the train suddenly stopped. The passengers presumed the conductor was aware of the fire, thinking he had stopped the train to evacuate. But this was not the case. The doors wouldn't open. Still unaware of the blaze, the conductor was confused about the train coming to a halt. He didn't do it, nor did his colleagues at the Alpine Center on the summit. The spreading fire burned the lines of the hydraulic brake system, which engaged the brakes automatically. Paradoxically, the system designed to prevent disasters had put the passengers into a deadly trap. They were inside the burning train in the middle of a 3,600 yards long tunnel. With the doors still closed and smoke taking over, passengers inside the rearmost compartment started to look for a way out. Despite all the effort, there was no way to open the doors. Erwin Getz, a builder, started hitting windows with his ski pole in an attempt to break them. An almost impossible feat, as the windows were made of break-resistant acrylic material. It was a race against time as the fire began to break into the compartment. Gates was hitting as hard as he could and finally managed to make a crack in the window. The relief lasted only for a second as Gates discovered another layer of acrylic glass behind the broken one. The fight continued. Several passengers had already passed out after inhaling toxic smoke. Eventually, the window broke and people started to escape the burning train. After 4 minutes, the conductor finally realized what had happened and contacted the service station for help. He was instructed to open all doors immediately and let the passengers escape. After the message, the connection was lost. Further complicating matters, the hydraulic system for opening the doors also failed. As much as the conductor kept trying, the doors would not open. The smoke was entering the rest of the compartments, and it was just a matter of time before the fire engulfed the whole train. Luckily, the conductor was calm enough to leave his cabin and engage the door's manual lock. He managed to open all the doors, allowing the people to leave the train. It was a moment of relief for all the passengers as they escaped the flaming train in the nick of time. For a moment, it seemed disaster was avoided, and it would have been if passengers hadn't made one deadly mistake. In the pitch-black darkness, and with their ski shoes on, the passengers tried to move away from the fire, so they climbed uphill. As they struggled to move through the tunnel, they didn't notice that all the smoke was going in the same direction. Kaproon Tunnel's 30 degrees steep angle created a chimney effect, which caused all the heat and smoke to travel upwards. None of the passengers who went up the tracks survived. The cloud of smoke was too thick, and the concentration of carbon monoxide was too high. Nobody could reach the end of the tunnel that was almost 3,000 yards away. The majority suffocated within 50 feet of the train. Only a group of 12 passengers from the rearmost compartment managed to escape the inferno. It was a stroke of sheer luck that among them was volunteer firefighter Thorsten Gradler, who had enough experience to know they had to go down past the fire. He shouted at the other passengers, "I know fireplaces, and when you open the flue, the fire shoots upwards, so you have to go down. Hold each other's hands. Believe me, we have to go down." With Gradler leading them, 12 passengers passed the burning conductor's cabin and reached the smoke-free zone below the train. They were forced to walk slowly because of the weight of the ski boots. Despite escaping death in smoke and flames, the group's agony did not end. They had to cross 650 yards of the track inside the tunnel. With the fire raging, there was the risk that the haulage cable might snap and send the train down on them. Luckily, it didn't happen, and the group reached the lower end of the tunnel. They were saved. The remaining 150 people, including the conductor, died from suffocation from heading upwards in the tunnel. Sadly, the death toll increased by 5 more people. Inside the twin train that was coming from the opposite direction were 2 people, a conductor and a passenger. They too failed to escape from the smoke and died of suffocation. The smoke spread fast, and it spread far. Ultimately, it reached the Alpencenter at the summit, where the staff tried to recover the power. When they noticed the smoke coming from the tunnel, they raised the alarm inside the station and adjacent shopping mall. In a rush to save their lives, the employees left the emergency door wide open, increasing the chimney effect in the tunnel. It flared the fire in the tunnel and brought more smoke into the station. By then, the service station down at Kaproon had alerted local firefighters. In half an hour, 500 firefighters, 22 helicopters, and 100 rescue vehicles arrived at the scene. Helicopters transported firefighters to the summit, where they rushed into the station to rescue anyone still inside. 4 staff members were left inside after the evacuation, unconscious from smoke inhalation. Although the firefighters managed to take them all out, it was too late for 3 of them. The train was fully engulfed in flames by the time responders arrived. There was no chance of getting to the other side. The firefighters abandoned the rescue effort due to the risk of the haulage cable snapping and sending the train back down the track. A total of 155 people died, including children. Most of the casualties were tourists from Austria and Germany. Others were from Japan, the United States, Slovenia, the Netherlands, the UK, and the Czech Republic. Among the victims were world champion freestyle skier Sandra Schmidt and 7-time Deaflympic medalist Josef Schauber. The nation was eager to find out how it happened, especially because the responsible claimed such a thing was impossible. So, what caused the fire? The answer is rather bizarre. Just 4 days after the accident, the examining judge of the Salzburg court had appointed an expert, Anton Muir, to investigate it. The Ministry of Interior had also sent a unit from the KTZ Forensic Center to investigate the fire scene. Unfortunately, the subject of the investigation had burned entirely, leaving no traces behind. Therefore, the twin train was used to determine the source of the fire. Investigators based their research on the testimony of Thomas Kraus, who claimed the smoke came from the dashboard of the conductor's cabin at the rear end of the train. In general, funiculars are built without parts that could cause a fire, no engines nor fuel tanks. Upon inspection, it was determined that the only item that could have caused the fire was a cabin space heater. As it turned out, no one had considered that such a seemingly irrelevant installation could end up burning down the entire train. The heater became the center of further investigation. Since both trains had the same heater installed, the one from the twin train was removed and taken to KTZ laboratories in Vienna. The investigators discovered that the heater's heating element was the fire's most likely source. They believed that it came loose, made contact with the plastic housing, and ignited it. The fire slowly spread, fed by flammable materials inside the desk. It ate into the lines of the 42 U.S. gallon hydraulic system, which eventually burst. The released oil and rubber flooring fueled the blaze that spread across the cabin and later the entire train. The controversial fan was installed in 1993 when the funicular was subjected to modernization. Salzburg public prosecutor Eva Daninger-Soria used reports filed by both Muir and the KTZ team to build the indictment against 16 people. 3 managers from Gletscher Kaprun AG, the company in charge of the funicular. 2 managing directors of the Austrian Swoboda, Karasori and Stahlbau GmbH, the business that carried out the modernization work and installed the fan heaters in 1993. 3 employees of the German Mannesmann Rexroth AG, who installed the hydraulic lines. 3 officials from the Ministry of Transport who had issued the railway operating license. 2 inspectors from the TÜV Technical Inspection Association, who approved the train. And 2 technicians and a builder who installed the emergency door at the Alpine Center. The public prosecutor was determined to find the culprits for the 155 lives lost in the most devastating peacetime tragedy in Austrian history. The trial started on June 18, 2002. The prosecutor claimed the accused had made a series of oversights in designing and inspecting the train. The key argument was that the fan heater, Fakir Hobby TLB, was intended for home use, and the manual explicitly stated it was not to be used in vehicles. Therefore, the fan shouldn't have been installed in the first place. The proximity of hydraulic lines only increased the likelihood of fire. In addition, no security features were present on the funicular. The entire design was a major oversight. The prosecutor put the reputation of the Austrian cable traffic system and the entire tourist industry at stake. It was a bold challenge to the system. The lengthy process was marked by a lot of controversies. In 2009, the German news reported on the alleged manipulation of the process by the Ministry of Interior and Salzburg court. The focus was put on the report and the treatment of the expert, Anton Muir, who was appointed by the examining judge, Manfred Seiss. For instance, when he arrived at the scene of the investigation, Muir was denied access to the tunnel. When he finally entered it, investigators from the KTZ Center had already taken away the evidence. Muir only received the fan heater in March 2001, 4 months after the accident. On top of everything, the Salzburg court utterly neglected a 54-page report filed by the expert. In his report, Muir noted traces of hydraulic oil in the heater housing. He also found traces of the insulating mineral wool that the Gletscher technicians had used to stuff the cavities between the built-in wooden panels. Finally, Muir was the one who stressed the proximity of hydraulic lines as an essential factor in the breakout of the fire. During the trial, the defense attorneys were allowed to make persistent attacks on Muir, which affected his mental health. At one point, the court found out that the expert had seen a psychiatrist and ordered his psychiatric examination. Since he had been diagnosed with a pronounced depressive syndrome, the court dismissed Muir. According to news sources, the expert said, "It's so dirty in court, I can't stand it any longer." With Muir eliminated, the rest of the experts still engaged in the process and played down the findings of his report. On February 19, 2004, after almost 2 years, the turbulent process came to an end. In contrast, Judge Manfred Seiss's shocking verdict opened a whole new chapter of the story. It was found that the disputed heater had necessary safety marks and was installed following legal standards of the time. Neither Swoboda nor the employees who set up the hydraulic lines were aware of its installation. The investigation also found that no oil leaked from the hydraulic system. The train itself was inspected according to schedule, and the Alpine Center's emergency door worked as specified. As such, there were, quote, no indications or concerns that funicular railways could be dangerous in terms of fire protection. All 16 defendants were acquitted of charges. The verdict shocked the prosecutor, victims' families, and the Austrian public. 155 people died, and no one was to be blamed. The way Judge Seiss saw it, quote, God turned off the light in the tunnel for a few minutes. The accident couldn't have been foreseen, as nothing similar had ever happened before. And that was it. Case closed. Then Gletscher Kaprun AG directors made a mistake that cast doubt. It seemed that the entire trial was an orchestrated cover-up. Upon receiving an acquittal, Gletscher Kaprun AG's management filed a lawsuit against the disputed heaters manufacturers, the German company Fakir. However, what they didn't count on was that the prosecutor's office in Salzburg would hand the case over to their colleagues in Germany. So, in November 2005, the Heilbronn Public Prosecutor's Office took over and asked the KTI Forensic Institute of the State Criminal Investigation Office in Stuttgart to renew the investigation. They were determined to do a thorough job. The first thing they did was to request a fan heater from the twin train to be delivered for examination. When they received it, they noticed a fastening dome on the heating element that allegedly let loose was missing. It was only the beginning of a series of shocking discoveries by German investigators. After that, the truth began to unravel. Next, they revealed that the heater was disassembled before the installation. The front and the rear part of the heater were taken apart, mounted on a hole in the control panel, and fastened back together. This meant that the safety test mark was no longer valid, and that the heater housing was violated and lost protection from liquid dropping in. Further, the following discovery brought a whole new light to the Kaprun disaster. While observing the heater, German investigators found red liquid residue inside. In the Salzburg court verdict, the judge assumed this was only a reddish condensation. However, the investigators wanted to make more than just an assumption. So they sent a sample of the liquid to the laboratory. The result? The red liquid was hydraulic oil, highly flammable hydraulic oil, that has been banned in aircraft construction for years due to the risk of fire. This clue led to a conclusion that the hydraulic lines were leaking and that the flammable oil was dripping inside the heater housing. It then came in contact with the heating element and started a fire. But what about the report claiming the heating element let loose and set the plastic rear wall of the heater on fire? In support of the claim, investigators from the Austrian KTZ Forensic Center delivered a fan of the twin train with the heating element bent and touching the rear wall. German investigators were rigorous in their research, though. According to Austrian investigators' photographs from immediately after the accident, the heating element was intact and a safe distance from the plastic black wall. They concluded that during the inspection, someone had manipulated the heating element by bending it toward the rear wall of the housing. Based on all the evidence, the German investigators dropped the case against Fakir. They further noted that, as claimed by the Austrian court verdict, the fire, quote, could hardly have happened. On the other hand, a fire could break out if there was hydraulic oil inside the fan heater. They also accused their Austrian colleagues from the KTZ Center of being sloppy in the investigation, and even worse, of manipulating the evidence. The German inspectors were determined not to let the whole thing pass so easily. So in 2008, they filed charges against 4 Austrian experts for manipulation of evidence. Eva Daninger-Soriat, the prosecutor who filed the initial charges in 2001, wanted to take the case, but the Ministry of Justice declared her.
The story of Schlitterbahn is one of family, a place built by families, for families, of big dreams, high hopes, and pushing harder, that ultimately ends with tragedy. This isn't the happy story of a company, well, a family, that it could and should have been. This is a story of failure.
If we mess up, it could be the end.
In 1966, Bob and Billy Henry purchased the 20-year-old rundown Camp Lander, a 13-acre campground with a spring-fed pool on the river in New Braunfels, Texas. Throughout the next decade, the family would revitalize the resort, purchasing as many adjacent properties as they could to grow and develop the camp into the Lander Resort, becoming a 40-acre riverside resort filled with multiple different types of entertainment. The Lander Resort was a full family affair, with the children working in different sectors of the attraction. At the growing Lander Resort, the Henry family observed how many people who came to visit were drawn to the river. While Bob Henry oversaw the new resort and attraction, his children would be a huge part of its operation. Gary Henry would be in charge of the numbers after graduating as an accountant from the University of Texas. Jana Henry, the youngest, would work in marketing and merchandising after majoring in fashion merchandising. The middle child, Jeff Henry, had no interest in a formal education. Jeff had many different roles growing up, opening a video game arcade bar and helping out at the family attraction. The resort had the odd water slide, but nothing extreme. Jeff was seen as the problem solver. When people were hitting the water too hard on one of the slides, he created a water break, a dip at the end of the slide that slowed people down. Jeff was creative and had been trying to find a way to channel that creativity. The late 70s saw water parks becoming the new, big tourist attraction, popping up throughout the United States, from George Millet's Wet n Wild to Disney's River Country. In 1977, Jeff Henry, at the age of 22, intended to take a break from the family business and took a trip down towards the Florida Keys. On his way in Orlando, he got to see the recently opened Wet n Wild and Disney's River Country and couldn't get the idea out of his head. He called his brother Gary, his sister Jana, and his parents, and they all loaded up an RV and took a trip to Orlando. This trip would be the start of something special and change the direction of the Lander Resort forever. The idea would be to create a version of these parks of their own at the resort, located on the river in Texas, taking full advantage of the area's natural resources. That same year, construction would begin on the Lander Resort's first official slide as part of the water park. They would call it the Schlitterbahn, a made-up German word combining the words for slippery and road, chosen due to the town's German heritage. In 1979, designed by the Henry family, the first planned slide of many they came up with opened. They were going to expand and add more very quickly. The river near the resort was quite stagnant, so the Henrys came up with a plan to pump the water to the top of the slides, with it flowing back into the river at multiple points to speed up the flow and clean the river out. Also, increasing the fun that could be had in the river. A year later, a 60-foot structure modelled on one of the towers of the Solms Castle in Braunfels, Germany was completed. Designed again in-house, the new highlight attraction featured 4 slides. Each slide would empty into the whitewater tube chute before dumping out into a man-made lagoon. In addition to this tower, 5 other slides were also in the process of being completed around the area's water park. Other additions included a barbecue restaurant and an arcade. The Henry family now began calling Schlitterbahn a fully fledged family water park, the place built by a family for families. Year by year, the Henry family continued to add more rooms, slides, and experiences to the resort, growing larger and larger. The slides were created in-house in a shed at the back of the property, with neighbours regularly complaining about the smell of fiberglass slides being made and the traffic that the new attraction was bringing. Right from the start, Schlitterbahn became incredibly popular. During 1980, over 250,000 people were estimated to visit the water park and the Lando Resort. In 1989, Bob and Billy retired from running the business, and it passed through to the 3 children. Those visiting loved the family feel of the park, the fact they could bring their own food, and most importantly, Jeff Henry's slides, which have been getting more and more daring over time. Over the next 2 decades, the park saw many expansions, purchasing resorts and land nearby to get more space. The Schlitterbahn name was becoming synonymous with water parks around the United States, perhaps even the most well-known of them all, along with Wet n Wild. Many slide concepts were developed through the Henry's in-house slide creation workshop, including the first water coaster concept and a surfing attraction. By 1988, for the park's 9th season, the water park featured 17 water slides and would later become the top attended seasonal US water park, in 1995 seeing 900,000 visitors a season. By now, creating water slides at Schlitterbahn was big business. Jeff Henry, the innovator of the family with the slides at the park, and his father had formed NBGS International Inc. in 1984. The company later grew to an over 200-person workforce that was creating rides for Six Flags, Wet n Wild, and Disney, among others, with many popular water slide attractions. The success of the family and their now patented slide designs cannot be understated. Bob Henry and his family had not only created one of the largest, most recognizable names in water parks, but were also creating slides that thousands of people around the world would experience. Jeff would remain the wild card of the company, scruffy looking and often called combative by those working with him, stating that he thought that he was always right. In 1994, he pleaded guilty to a 3rd-degree felony of drug possession after he was caught with a large amount of marijuana. But he made no apology. He said that if he was demanding and impatient, it was because he was consumed with making Schlitterbahn the best water park in the world. He had no formal education after high school, no design or engineering experience outside of the company, and people didn't question it. He had a creative spark that he would focus on making water slides that people were loving. He was obsessed with making bigger and scarier attractions to thrill those visiting. In 1989, at a water park in Brazil, he created a 135-foot high slide called Insano. At the time, it would be the world's tallest water slide. He still wanted bigger, he wanted the best, and he wanted it first. There was never any secret about how Schlitterbahn had designed and come up with any of its slides. Trial and error. It would be over 2 decades after the original park opened that Schlitterbahn would expand to a second park. Jeff Henry had big plans to expand, and in September 2000, they broke ground on their second Texas park. Hoping to compete with the already struggling Super Splash Adventure in Edinburgh, the new Schlitterbahn featured a queue system where you would wait in your tube before getting on the park's main attractions. While the original park was German-themed, this new park would take on the feel of a Brazilian beach. Managed by Jeff Henry, Schlitterbahn's second $13 million water park opened in summer 2001. Around 200,000 people attended the opening year, and the friendly family atmosphere from the original park was kept, with the layout and slides at this new version being considered groundbreaking. A third park joined the company's portfolio in Galveston, Texas. With constant success and growth, the company began planning to open the first Schlitterbahn outside of Texas. Located in Wyandotte County, Kansas, across from Interstate 435, also home to the Kansas Speedway, the new planned 300-acre, 3 times larger than the company's other parks, $300 million resort was set to be called Schlitterbahn Vacation Village and was announced in October 2005. Originally, the plans were to be built in a different city, but Kansas City officials convinced the water park owners to bring it to Kansas. Complete with indoor and outdoor sections, rivers linking hotels to the park, treehouse accommodations, a casino, multiple restaurants in a covered river walk, and a marine life section. The plans were ambitious, and local officials said that the park would result in 3,000 new jobs and an annual payroll of about $90 million. It would have a huge impact on the area, with some areas operating year-round. Rather than the park costing local taxpayers, it would be Schlitterbahn who would agree to purchase the Star bonds to make the whole resort a reality, as they were convinced of its success. Star bonds required them to be paid off through the sales tax revenue generated by the development, and were a scheme introduced to increase regional and national visitation to Kansas. The promise for what Schlitterbahn would bring to the area was huge, offering much more than just another water park. This would be a whole destination resort. Schlitterbahn Vacation Village construction was set to begin in 2007, with the park opening in 2008. During the groundbreaking celebration, it was announced that X-Town Development Company would partner with the water park company on this new project, with retailers such as House of Blues and Ron John expected to open at the new location. By late 2007, it was confirmed that the water park would be delayed until 2009. While the groundbreaking ceremony was held, it wouldn't be until mid-2008 when construction would begin on the water park project. And while the rest of the project was looking to be delayed, the water park was planned to open on time in 2009. As construction continued around the site, the targeted opening date of June 2009 went by, and no employees had yet been hired to operate the park.
We have a progress update on the new Schlitterbahn water park in KCK.
It was originally supposed to open in late May or early June. Tonight, KMBC9's Marcus Morris learned it could open in a week.
The recession not only had stalled all other plans for the mega site, but had impacted the construction of the water park. Just a few months before opening, the project's construction manager for the entire resort from Turner Construction left, and Schlitterbahn had to take over fully to try and finish the park. Many began to question if the troubled park would ever open. Billboards even appeared with the word Schlitterbahn sucks, as people were unhappy they had not hired any local construction workers for the project. Schlitterbahn Vacation Village would welcome its first guests in a soft opening during July 2009. Announced quietly on the company's blog, on Twitter, and for anyone waiting outside, around 50 people paid $20 per person to experience the sort of finished water park after it opened mid-afternoon.
Kelly, if you weren't on Twitter or just hanging out here at the front gate, you probably missed it. But those who did find out and made it here for this surprise afternoon opening had a ball.
The park insisted a grand opening would happen later this summer, but for now, 8 of the 13 planned attractions were up and running, and this could be considered a sneak peek. What was on offer had been hugely cut from what had been originally planned. There was no indoor section, and it was very much just a generic water park. Just a few days after the soft opening, the remaining attractions slowly opened, and Schlitterbahn began charging its full $32.99 admission. The first Schlitterbahn park outside of Texas was now open. Within a year, the company had deemed the venture a success, and announced plans to open another park in Texas and one in Fort Lauderdale.
Well, it's still not everything it was supposed to be by now.
But the Schlitterbahn Water Park is now open in Kansas City, Kansas for its first full summer season.
Schlitterbahn began its first fall season in Kansas on May 14, 2010. The opening year didn't really make the best first impression, with tons of delays, lower than average temperatures, and anger over not hiring local construction crews. The company went into 2010 hoping for a fresh start, urging Kansas citizens to come check out the park, even though nothing new had been added from the first year.
We are just about to announce the next major phase of construction, which will include the Riverwalk retail area. Once we get that going, we will let you know more about what's coming next at the water park as early as this summer.
Despite the economy, Schlitterbahn had invested $180 million into the project. Those bonds originally planned to be used for the whole resort had not been issued, and this was built using all private funds. Those plans for the surrounding resort area were still coming, or so they said, and they hoped it would open in 2012. While the surrounding area had been cleared out, the economy had meant the project would already be delayed. Things already had to be cut, such as a river that guests could ride to attractions and from their hotel. None of the expansion and surrounding areas were ever completed. The project was pretty doomed from the start. The park opened alone and achieved moderate success. Not as successful as hoped, but not too bad. In 2011 and 2012, new rides were added to the park, finally completing the circuit of the Transportainment River system for riders to get around the park. The park was now home to the Torrent River, the world's largest tidal wave river, Storm Blaster, a water coaster, and multiple exciting attractions. These, however, were nothing to what was coming.
All right, boys. Kiss it goodbye, man. Are you ready for the pin? Ready.
On November 15, 2012, a newspaper reported that a colossal slide was coming to Kansas. It was called the world's tallest, fastest, and most extreme water slide ever built. A Mega Blaster speed slide, not like anything seen before. All details about the attraction, for now, would be kept secret. The idea for the new attraction came spur of the moment by Jeff Henry and his chief collaborator and designer, John Shawley, a former yacht builder and slide designer in Asia, before he started working for Jeff in 1998. At the IAAPA trade show, a team from the Travel Channel producing an extreme water park TV show and looking for their first episode, asked Jeff what he had been working on. He answered with the tallest, fastest slide ever made. Something he came up with on the spot to wow those and get the TV episode. Schlitterbahn had no plans to build anything like this, and after returning from the expo, he sketched out his plan for a one-of-a-kind slide that would not only drop riders from the highest point on the slide in the world, but feature a large hill. Much of the process and designing and making of the ride would be captured for the TV show, and Jeff wanted to design and make it in a record-breaking short time frame. The hype around what would be coming to Kansas was at a high that the somewhat media water park had never before seen. Jeff Henry had the media call in to find out what was coming. He called it the most terrifying ride ever built in a water park. But he did also mention that safety came first, so a rigorous testing period would be used. Just extremely quickly. He called the coming attraction a game changer for the industry. He was right, just not in the way anyone expected. Just like with every slide created since the park opened, and there was no secret to how they had done it in the past, everything would use trial and error to design. He often said no model of how to do it existed, so he had to come up with it himself. That was the nature of making something new. If it didn't meet Jeff's expectations, he said you go back, you fix it, and you make it work. You also keep it safe. It had always worked in the past, and he was selling his designs to some of the biggest amusement companies in the world. While they often consulted with engineers, the duo had no formal education and often disagreed with what the experts were telling them. They would have to try and figure out everything from the acceptable weights in the raft to how many forces the riders would feel. This was a bigger, more dangerous offering than either of them had attempted before. and with the deadline of the TV show looming, they had to make it fast. Firstly, they created a model of what they hoped to build. This was then followed by a nearly 90-foot tall, $200,000 test slide, half the real size of the final project. They built this prototype in a mud field near the company's headquarters in Texas. The final height of the finish slide was kept secret at all times. After the ceremonial fruit roll, the test rafts filled with sandbags went down the prototype slide. Nobody was allowed to ride till at least 10 rafts weighing 700 pounds made it to the bottom safely. As the first rafts went down and hit the hill, they launched into the air. As those watching burst into laughter, it was seen as just another problem for them to work out and part of the testing process. In reality, even from the prototype, the design was flawed from the very start. I want to point out, it was later stated by Jeff Henry that the footage shown in the Travel Channel program was exaggerated for dramatical effect for the show, and to make the upcoming slide look scarier. He even said that the rafts flying into the air were faked. You can actually see the wheels they added to the rafts underneath in the Travel Channel footage. Originally, the test slide featured a 60-degree drop, but it wasn't working. To stop the boats flying into the air, the angle at the bottom of the drop was lessened. The heavier the weight, the faster they flew, and the easier it was to launch into the air on the hill. This kind of hill is commonly called an airtime hill in the roller coaster world. The difference being that roller coasters have upstop wheels to keep the trains launching into the air. The first people to test the half-size model would be Jeff Henry. After some tweaks, they made it to the bottom and took the trial as a success, ready to head back to Kansas to build the real thing. The slide will be called Verrückt, meaning insane in German. Jeff's previous tallest slide had been called Insano, insane in Spanish. Construction on the real slide began with only 4 months set until it was supposed to open. With hundreds of custom-formed pieces of fiberglass, 40,000 pounds of steel was used to make the 16-story, 264-step high stairs, and 4 giant freight train tankers were cut down and painted to be later stacked to make the tower the slide would launch from. Jeff Henry had become a master at reusing equipment for his park and had a huge boneyard full of metal from old amusement parks and even ships he would use to create his rides. What was somewhat becoming a tradition at the Kansas Schlitterbahn, the construction would not be easy. With delayed construction, yet after just over a month, the mammoth slide would be complete. The new slide used a brand new, never-seen-before water nozzle to propel riders up the large hill after the drop, and it was causing issues. With the tight deadline for the opening, the new slide would reluctantly have to be delayed. 7 months after the planned opening, in 2013, missing the whole water park season, Verrückt was thought to be ready, with the nozzle system finally in place. The nozzle system to protect riders up the second hill if needed not only did not work reliably, but didn't adjust the amount of thrust in proportion to what was required to get over the hill. So a raft carrying 400 pounds worth of riders got the same thrust as a raft carrying 545 pounds.
Yeah, breaking records and scaring a heck of a lot of people, Cynthia. It is 17 stories high. Let me step out so you can get a good look at this thing. 264 steps will get you to the top of this slide. The official height, 168 feet and 7 inches.
In April 2014, Verrückt will be measured by the Guinness World Records, and its official height finally revealed. The water slide stood at 168 feet tall, a new world record beating the current tallest in Brazil, that had overtaken Jeff's previous tallest slide. Jeff said he rightly had the record back on American soil. While measured and confirmed, Verrückt's troubles were not over. The opening originally set for May would be delayed again. What was originally set to coincide with a 1-hour Travel Channel special release on the ride was still not ready.
In 3 days and counting until the world's largest and tallest water slide is expected to open to the public, Verrückt was supposed to open back in May, but the debut date has been pushed back a couple of times for more testing.
Behind the scenes, things were not going well. The slide was not working. Rumors began that rafts were flying into the air. To try and hide this being seen by the now watching media, testing had to be done in secret at night. During these secret testings, sandbag rafts were, just as in earlier testing, flying off the top of the hill. The whole completed slide had to be redesigned after it was thought ready. The forces were too high and passengers might pass out on it if they didn't fly up into the air. Over half the slide would be taken apart and reprofiled. The opening date would not be met and media days were cancelled.
I think we almost got it semi-tamed. It's still kind of wild.
In just a few months, the bottom of the first drop would be shallowed out to try and slow them down, and the second hill would be made 5 feet longer, with the 45-degree climb changing to 22 degrees. Rushing, as the whole project had been from the start, once again, the design was hastily changed to try and make the slide work. This rebuild alone cost nearly $1 million.
Well, you see that hill right there in the middle. That's where a lot of the problems are right now. They have decided to take that down in size. In fact, they even reconstructed the slide, took parts of it apart and rebuilt it. But they're still having trouble with the conveyor belt and really pushing that raft up over that hill and getting those passengers through safely.
Jeff Henry and John stated they had based their calculations for designing the slide on roller coasters, but that just didn't translate well to a water slide, causing the rafts to fly into the air on the hill. Media continued to report on the slide's troubles and delays, with testing on the rebuilt slide only taking place again at night, seemingly to hide any issues. Nets were added to the slide, the same netting system that the park had used on other slides. Yet this time the clearance from the slide was quite low, and riders were instructed to keep their arms down just in case they could touch the netting at speeds well over 60 miles per hour. Finally, after months of failures, Schlitterbahn believed they finally had the tallest slide in the world working, and they were ready to let people ride it. Once again, just like the prototype, Jeff, John, and the brother of Jeff's assistant would be the first riders on their design. They just barely made it over the 55-foot hill on the second try, with the nozzle not firing correctly on the first try. Testing would continue until on July 10th, 2014, the world's tallest water slide would finally open to the public. For multiple years now, Jeff Henry had been consumed with making this attraction work, and making it the best slide he had ever made. Right before opening, a safety consultant hired by the park gave concerns about the safety of the attraction. There were consistent rumors that rafts were going airborne, yet the park denied it. The safety consultant recommended nobody under 16 should ride. The designers decided that 14 sounded better. The age limit was dropped completely just before the opening, with stickers covering it on the sign. A height of 54 inches was the only factor on who could ride. Riders would be divided into groups of 3 and told to step on a scale. If the total weight of 3 riders was between 400 and 550 pounds, they could climb the stairs to the top and ride.
We were airborne. I mean, we were in the air.
We made it!
My hand, I'm just shaking still. I mean, that is without a doubt the most extreme radical thing I've ever been in.
Me too.
In any ride, anywhere.
Verut was finally opened publicly, and it seemed like a success. It was voted Best New Water Park Ride at the 2014 Golden Ticket Awards.
The riders we spoke to loved it despite the reservations and weigh-ins. Thrill seekers started lining up before 5 o'clock this morning to experience Verut. But before taking the plunge, they had to be measured and weighed.
Verut operated for the remainder of the season and throughout 2015, seemingly with no issues. Behind the scenes though, those issues were being covered up. Verut was open for around 4 months during the season each year. Almost immediately, injuries began to be documented for the attraction. From multiple concussions to neck pain and even broken toes coming from airborne rafts to collisions with the wall at the end of the run-out pool. Some riders even indicated they came inches away from the netting and hoops above the slide. On June 16, 2016, one rider reported hitting the overhead hoop and netting of the ride after the raft went airborne, causing his eye to swell shut for the rest of the day. Publicly, these issues were unknown, to the point that the director of the park was requiring the reports from the lifeguards to be destroyed and altered to hide some of the incidents. The injuries continued, and rafts continued to go airborne. Many injuries coming from one specific raft that continued to be put out of service and returned. The ride's maintenance was falling behind, and only essential work was completed. Rust could be seen on the attraction, and parts of the slide continued to fail, including a braking system. There was no mention of rafts going airborne or brake failures in the ride's manual, so staff mostly had to guess what to do. The incident reports were kept hidden, and from the outside the ride still looked like it had no issues. All of this was kept secret until the worst thing that could have happened was about to occur.
Breaking news, tragedy at a major American water park. The details just coming in. Word of a child killed on the world's tallest water slide. You see it there. The park now closed through at least tomorrow. The investigation just underway.
Less than 2 months after someone else reported they had hit the netting, on August 7, 2016, Caleb Schwab, the 10-year-old son of a Kansas state representative, tragically lost his life while riding Verrückt. His raft went airborne on the hill and collided with the netting, something that should never have been allowed to happen. The other 2 riders were also heavily injured.
We honestly don't know what's happened. That's why an investigation, a full investigation, is necessary.
The park was closed immediately for investigation, though reopened 3 days later with just Verrückt and 4 other slides closed that were deemed not to meet safety standards. After many delays, it would take until 2018 for the indictment to be issued by a grand jury. The charges against the park's director of operations and Schlitterbahn included involuntary manslaughter and interference with law enforcement, among others. The park's director of operations had withheld daily reports that could contain incriminating information against himself and the ride's operation. This was only found when one of the lifeguards who was forced to hide the slide's troubles came forward to help the investigation. The evidence withheld delayed the investigation by over 6 months. Among the reports were dozens of incidents alerting the director of the park about airborne raft incidents. The park announced the same year that Verrückt would be demolished following a criminal investigation. The family of the boy who lost his life settled out of court for around $20 million in 2017. Further details came out in the indictment. Experts in ride design and safety examined Verrückt after the incident and found physical evidence that other rafts had gone airborne and collided with the overhead hoops and netting. They noted that the ride's design violated nearly all aspects of the long-standing industry safety standards published by ASTM, which were not required by law to be followed, but was heavily suggested. The park complied with few, if any, of the industry safety standards. The indictment argued that Verrückt's operators knew about the growing list of injuries and that more would be expected to happen with the ride posing a risk. Much of the aftermath focused on the rushing of fundamental steps in the design process. In place of mathematical and physics calculations, they have relied on trial and error methods. Evidence from emails stated that Jeff Henry was responsible for the rush timeline to make the ride happen. Emails also stated that it was a design project for a TV show. It couldn't be changed to anything else, speed was required, and it had to work. He had set a completion deadline for the entire project as June 15, 2013, a period of only 7 months, including all design, construction, and testing. The design and construction of the Verrückt prototype began and was completed within 36 days of when the idea was first conceived. The indictment stated this rush schedule affected quality control. Many of Jeff Henry's comments from the TV show and footage were used to prove that the creation of the attraction had been unsafe. Henry said that he was not going by the standards, as this had never been attempted, and he will be redefining those standards. It was also found out outside engineering firms performed accelerometer tests as close to a week before the attraction opened and indicated that rafts would likely go airborne on the hill. The data was recovered during the aftermath from HSC's own project records that showed that both Henry and Shirley had access to it. Either they completely just disregarded it, they didn't understand the results, or they understood it but opened the right regardless. Jeff later said that everything the experts had told him had usually been wrong. While upstop wheels are used on roller coasters to prevent trains from leaving the track, no system was in place here from the start. From start to finish, the safety of the attraction was signed off by the ride's designers themselves. Water parks in Kansas were able to self-inspect. The state of Kansas would vote to change the law that allowed all state amusement park attractions to now have to be regularly inspected by the state. The demolition of the slide was approved in July 2018 and began in November after the park closed for the 2018 season, taking 2 months to be completely removed. Schlitterbahn, Kansas would never open again following 2018. The impact of the incident, which could have been avoided, had greatly affected the park's reputation and revenue, and feuds were reported between the Henry family owners. The tragic incident would mark the end of the family-run Schlitterbahn that had operated for decades. During 2019, 2 of Schlitterbahn's Texas parks were sold to Cedar Fair to try and cover costs, including the original park in New Braunfels, which started it all. Cedar Fair would now own the Schlitterbahn name. They had the option to also purchase the now closed Kansas City Park for just $6 million. Cedar Fair decided not to pursue purchasing the park. All further expansions, such as Fort Lauderdale, were cancelled. The park they didn't sell to Cedar Fair was retained by the Henry family and rebranded and operates today as Beach Park. After the indictment was issued, 3 days later, Jeff Henry was arrested in Texas in connection with the incident. A new indictment was filed charging Jeff Henry, Shirley, and the Henry & Sons Construction Company, owned by Schlitterbahn, with second-degree murder, in addition to the 17 other felonies. The trial began in October 2018, with all defendants pleading not guilty.
Jeff Henry walks out of the Wyandotte County Courthouse after pleading not guilty to multiple charges against him, including murder.
I don't have anything to say today, thanks. I'll be talking to you guys shortly after I get some rest.
Jeff Henry never gave any explanation about what happened on the attraction to cause the death. He said he just didn't know what happened and had never been told about the trouble behind the scenes of the ride. He thought the reports that rides could go airborne were based on outdated information and that he had been... They often say sequels never live up to the original. This time, that follow-up will be a ride that would break 7 world records. Sadly, going on to be remembered in history for all the wrong reasons.
To introduce to you the greatest, most spectacular roller coaster of the 3rd millennium.
The largest drop on a wooden coaster anywhere in the world. The Son of Beast will set 7 new world records.
Secrets concerning the Son of Beast.
Multiple mechanical issues.
This is the Son of Beast.
When Kings Island opened in 1972, it was an instant success. Taft Broadcasting had successfully created a brand new amusement park that would replace Cincinnati's Coney Island and provide a way forward to expand and grow. While the park's original roller coaster, the Racer, designed by John C. Allen, jump-started the coaster renaissance of the 1970s. That momentum would only keep growing as they researched and designed the world's longest, tallest, and fastest wooden roller coaster, the Beast. Designed and built in-house at Kings Island, the terrain-hugging ride had a top speed of 64 miles per hour and a world record drop at 141 feet. At over 7,000 feet long, it would create one of the largest roller coasters ever made. That huge track was different from the bold standout of the Racer, in that it was all entirely hidden in the woodland of the park. The Beast will become a legend throughout the world. We have a full expedition looking at this iconic ride. If you want to know more, be sure to take a look at it. While the 1970s ended with a huge hit of a ride, the 1980s would not be so kind on the Cincinnati theme park. First came the issues with the Bat, the first modern arrow-suspended roller coaster, which allowed train cars to swing side to side. It was plagued with design flaws. Very few people got to ride the original Bat. Those who did loved it and raved about the experience. The park tried to fix what was broken, but it sadly only operated for 3 seasons. King's
Stop.
suspended roller coaster, which allowed train cars to swing side to side. It was plagued with design flaws. Very few people got to ride the original Bat. Those who did loved it and raved about the experience. The park tried to fix what was broken, but it sadly only operated for 3 seasons. Kings Island went through multiple changes of owners during this decade. Taft Broadcasting sold their theme park division to the Kings Island Entertainment Company in 1984. This sale for $167.5 million included Kings Island.
Well, it's not going to load his stream.
3 years later, in
Browser's
1987,
garbage.
Kings Island was sold by itself to American Financial Corporation. While the Kings Island Entertainment Company would no longer own the park, they would still operate it. The largest impact, though, will come in 1992.
Well, believe it or not, Kings Island opens tomorrow, and wait till you see the changes they've made. Since last year, Kings Island's been bought by Paramount Pictures, and now you'll see more attractions featuring Paramount movie and cartoon characters like Star Trek actors and the Flintstones.
New York-based Paramount, who had never operated a theme park, but was interested after seeing the success of
actually,
other
his stream's
studio-based
just
theme
like
parks,
that.
such as MGM Studios and Universal Studios, which proved that
I
theming
think his
was
stuff
key,
may have crashed.
and tie-ins could easily promote Hollywood movies. Looked at as marketing machines for their films and merchandise, it was another avenue of revenue. In a deal worth over $400 million, Paramount Communications Inc. would instantly become the United States' 4th largest amusement park operator, created a brand new subsidiary called Paramount Parks. Along with the separately owned Kings Island, the deal would also include Great America in Santa Clara, Carowinds, and Kings Dominion, along with a 20% ownership stake and operational contract in Canada's Wonderland. MCA, Paramount, Disney, and Time Warner would now control 13 of the 20 most popular amusement parks in the United States and Canada, with the newly acquired Paramount Parks receiving a combined annual attendance of 11 million guests. In 1993, exactly 21 years after the hit park had opened, it would now be known as Paramount's Kings Island. Themed IP additions came thick and fast.
Alright, time to sit up. I'm tired of being lazy. You motherfuckers better be ready to game here in just a minute after I smoke my cigarette.
Worked. The station will resemble a flight.
We'll watch Kilo.
There was Fang. Something weird just happened to me. Live stream just went black. Heard that. That is weird. Very, very weird. You got the game. I know these. Oh, they healed. Never mind. Smash awesome though. She doesn't. Nice. You was chilling about that on DVD. See what happened? There was just funny screen that was buffering. They were saying for you and some brothers you checked. Yeah, it's very weird. You're not blinding nobody, you idiot. No, I got shadow dance. Not happening. No. They didn't bring a hatch offering. Maybe it was spawn here though? It did not spawn there. I thought she would go for the window. Alright, GG.
Right for that. She's gonna wiggle out.
GG. Been having some really good race matches lately.
Not pissed.
get survivor match going. I'm gonna use this build right here.
Why is it running at 2 Mac? No, I'm not doing any games. It's just gonna run like. It's gonna run like that. I'm not doing. Fuck that. Fucking read. What the hell is even the problem? Why is Microsoft? That uTorrent, like I had like I see it off this right here, and it takes nothing. It's been open for days now. I'd probably just actually smoke a little bit.
And it would be themed around the Top Gun movie when it opened in 1993. The following year, the park would get what would later be known as the Action Theatre. It would be a motion simulator themed to another Tom Cruise film, 1990's Days of Thunder. It's kind of a shame they didn't continue with the Tom Cruise themes. Who wouldn't love to have been on a roller coaster based around being shaken up, called Cocktail? Around 2 hours drive from Kings Island, a new theme park had opened in 1987, Kentucky Kingdom. A decade later, it was purchased for $64 million by Premier Parks, who also would buy Six Flags in 1998 for $1.9 billion, making them the second largest theme park operator in the country. A huge Gotham City area of the park was to be built using rethemed rides and brand new coasters. To counter this, Kings Island decided it needed to get serious with the park. This time, bigger, bolder, and more in your face. To best Kentucky Kingdom, a $40 million 2-year expansion of a brand new land was planned. This bright in-your-face area was to be named the Paramount Action Zone, a new 7-acre themed area that was intended to capture the feel of an active Hollywood movie studio backlot. Phase 1, opening in 1999, featured a special effects stunt show and 2 new thrill rides. Drop Zone, the world's tallest gyro drop that reached 315 feet, and the other will be the park's 12th roller coaster, themed after one of the best movies ever made, Face Off. The Midwest only inverted face-to-face roller coaster. The park stated this new land would not only allow guests to see real stunts, but place them right inside the action. Very original. The main event was still yet to come the following year. During the Face-Off media preview, attendees saw large walls around a new construction site, with what was inside only viewable when riding the coaster or from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Shortly after, footage began to appear, confirming the park was building a new wooden roller coaster. Something bigger, fiercer, and scarier than anything that had come before. While some classics never get a follow-up, Face Off, it would be the park's monster of a ride that would. A sequel to The Beast. In 1999, a huge wooden crate appeared inside the new land. Inside, guests could hear roars and it would shake. Something was waiting patiently to be unleashed, and 20 years after the grand opening of The Beast, Paramount's Kings Island would unleash it. On May 11th, 1999, the invited audience would gather early in the morning at the bottom of the Beast's first drop and would patiently wait outside the box as Montel Williams would be on hand as the director of thrills. During Montel's introduction and speech, the large box would begin roaring.
Paramount's Kings Island is going to unleash on the world something that we can call the sequel to The Beast. This is the son of Beast.
The audience would then see an animation of the largest wooden coaster ever to be built, complete with the only loop on a wooden roller coaster in the world. The park proudly boasted this ride would feature 7 world records. This list is somewhat questionable, but let's take a look through them. The first record was that the ride was the world's only looping wooden roller coaster. The loop would be the only portion of the ride that would have a steel superstructure. Second, the world's fastest wooden roller coaster, with a max speed of 78 miles per hour. The tallest wooden roller coaster drop on Earth, with a drop of 214 feet, making it a hypercoaster. The park with the most wooden coaster track on Earth, at 22,600 feet. The tallest wooden roller coaster structure ever made, at 218 feet. The park would also now tie for the most roller coasters on Earth. I'm not sure this really counts as a record, but the next one was that they also tied for the most wooden roller coaster in the park. Maybe 5 world records? 7 sounds a lot better though. Finally, the Son of Beast will be planned to open in April 2000.
The Beast, at its largest drop, is 140 feet high. Well, the Son of Beast will feature 3 drops that are higher, with one of them exceeding 200 feet, the largest drop on a wooden coaster anywhere in the world. While reaching record speeds of nearly 80 miles per hour, you'll encounter 2 helices, both left and right, and pull over 4.5 Gs.
The ambition of the ride was huge. The anticipation for roller coaster fans to ride it, even bigger. Kings Island's newest ride will be a complement to The Beast. Something similar, but different. Designed by Werner Stengel, who had had his hand in over 500 of the world's roller coasters, the 7,032 feet of track was envisioned as the project of the millennium, making Kings Island the wooden roller coaster capital of the world. Vice President of Maintenance and Construction, David Folk, said that this would be one sequel that would surpass the reputation of the original. The ride's construction had begun in April 1999 by the Roller Coaster Corporation of Ohio, a subsidiary of the Roller Coaster Corporation of America, on the 12-acre site, and would continue throughout the year. Costing $20.5 million, it would fulfill Paramount's vision to spend more on the park than it had originally cost to open in 1972, as well as being the largest investment in the park's history. RCCA had thought about the idea of building the world's first wooden hypercoaster in 1997, and approached Kings Island to see if they would be interested in building it. RCCA had built the wooden roller coaster Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, which was another troubled story, and the world's previous highest wooden roller coaster.
Common sense. Listen to what our operators are saying. Obey all posted signs and warnings.
Kings Island spokesperson Jeffrey Siebert says his staff makes every effort to warn parkgoers of potential dangers on some rides through clearly marked signs at every ride and in every map parkgoers get when they walk through the gates. What he cannot guarantee, however, is that patrons will heed those warnings.
When asked if the ride was being built to counter competition from Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom, Tim Fisher, the park's executive vice president, stated that it was the direct response of surveys 2 years earlier indicating people wanted a faster, higher coaster than the Beast. Less of a response to the competition and more of a response to the consumers. He hoped one day they may top it again with a 300-foot wooden coaster. The Son of Beast would use 2.5 million board feet of wood, which is close to 473 miles, enough to lay end to end from Cincinnati to New York City. For the support structure, each southern pine was harvested from a planted forest near Atlanta. Each tree had barely matured, averaging around 2 pieces of lumber per tree. The track piles would use Douglas fir. The ride was built on 2,414 footers, each sunk 11 foot deep into the hilly terrain. The ride would have 3 trains built by Premier Rides. Right from the start, problems plagued the huge ride, and it would soon become the problem child. The station was themed as Outpost 5, a high-security outpost which had captured the Son of Beast. Your job will be to board a perimeter surveillance vehicle to try and find the beast and make sure it was contained. Outpost 5 actually goes back further than Son of Beast, however. A recording used to play in the Adventure Express queue that said, "Attention all board-in passengers. The Express will soon be board-in for the Trans-Mountain Run to Outpost 5. It is also linked to the ride's vague story, first appearing in a floral display when the ride opened in 1991. Son of Beast begins with a banked 51-foot drop straight away before the first lift hill. From the top, 218 feet in the air, the ride is non-stop action, just like Face Off. Riders would reach speeds of up to 78 miles per hour, followed by 2 more huge drops of 164 feet and 149 feet, weaving in and out of itself 13 times and then heading into a 118-foot tall, extremely smooth